and you will find the fish, and you will find my husband.
Tears in the eyes of an Amish mom accused of drowning her 4-year-old son as she watches body camera video in court. This video per WKYC TV. She was forced to watch the moment of her arrest after she allegedly killed her son.
I gave him to God.
You gave him to God?
Yes.
What do you mean by that?
I threw him in the lake, and I gave him to God. And people are going to tell me I am crazy, but he is real. And he loves you. He really does love you.
Ruth Miller is pleaded not guilty by reason of insanity. Let's break down whether her alleged spiritual delusion could spare her the rest of her life in prison. We're on the case presented by Law&Crime. I'm Stewart. The Ruth Miller we've seen in court now through 2 court appearances is much more subdued compared to the woman you see in the body camera video after she allegedly killed her son. Here's Miller entering court at her first appearance. Now, yesterday she was in court for an evidentiary hearing where her defense argued that she should be granted bond. Now, before we get into whether an insanity plea could actually work for her defense, let's break down this story and how we got to this point. Now, Miller has been in custody since August 23rd. Deputies say Miller, who's Amish, and her family were doing religious exercises by a lake where they were vacationing, which is about an hour and a half south of Cleveland. They say that Miller threw her 4-year-old son into a lake from a dock as a gift from God.
I gave him to God.
You gave him to God?
Yes.
What do you mean by that?
I threw him in the lake, and I gave him to God. And people are going to tell me I am crazy, but he is real. And he loves you. He really does love you. He loves you. And I doubted him. I doubted him so many times. But I am to tell you, he is coming soon. He is coming very soon. Prepare your hearts. The end is close. And I'm for sure supposed to tell you that he does love you. Okay?
Ma'am, can you explain to me what happened? Who did you throw in the water?
I gave my son to God.
Your son?
Yes.
Where's your husband?
He went for a walk this morning.
And you haven't seen him since?
He didn't ever come back. And we went to the boat and his clothes were there. And God told me he's in the lake and a fish swallowed him. And you're actually supposed to go look for him in the bottom of the lake. And you will find the fish, and you will find my husband. And then you will believe. But ye of little faith that did not believe before seeing.
Okay.
So send people down to the bottom of the lake looking for a fish that has my husband.
How old's your son that's in the lake?
4. He's sweet. I love him. I gave him to God.
Okay. 7/9/40 Central. We're out with the mother. She is advising that she threw her 4-year-old son in the lake to give him to God.
The body camera video, it is chilling. Law enforcement realizing at this moment that Miller's 4-year-old son was missing.
They are there. It truly was. I doubted him, and then pain came back to me. My husband and I both doubted him, and pain came back to me.
I need to know where your husband's at.
He's at the bottom of the lake in a fish.
He's in a fish.
Yes.
There's no fish large enough on an Atwood to swallow your husband.
He's at the bottom of the lake in a fish.
Okay.
I thought your husband went for a walk.
Yeah, and then we came to the boat, and his clothes were laying on the boat.
Okay.
Tan pants and cream shirt and flip-flops.
Do you have a cell phone?
It's in the camper.
It's in the camper. Where's your camper at?
I think it's...
Area 3?
I think so, yeah. It's like a tannish camper.
It's a tannish camper. You don't know what lot number it is?
No.
We really need to verify your husband's still
Where?
with us.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
Well, he's actually just go out in the bottom of the lake.
Well, I can't go in the bottom of the lake. So
Do you have scuba divers?
Yeah, we're gonna have to call divers in to go to the
Okay.
bottom of the lake.
Please do.
And you're saying
Get the best ones there are, because this is a miracle from God, and you will see. You will see.
you're saying your 4-year-old son's down there too?
He's with God.
Where's his body at?
I don't know.
Where did you throw him in the water at?
Off of the dock at the causeway.
Where the bike was today?
Where the boat was?
Yeah, where the boat.
Okay.
Please believe me. I know.
When there's supposed to be ones coming out there?
I think there was one.
Does
standing
anybody
by.
have a glass of water?
We can get you water.
Please.
What's up?
Thank you.
Before we get back to this episode of On the Case, I want to pause and talk about our partner at truthfinder.com. This is a great resource. We often use it here at Law&Crime as a way to learn more about the people who are involved in our stories. That may be previous addresses or any sort of criminal record that they may have. It is an excellent resource that can give you some peace of mind even if you don't work in true crime, because this is one of the largest public record search services in the US, and with the paid subscription service, you get access to unlimited reports about almost anyone. And right now, you can get 50% off your first month of confidential background reports. Just go to truthfinder.com/OTC.
We're right now we're gonna walk up to the squad, okay? That's what we're going to do. We're going to put you in the back of the squad.
You will find my husband.
Okay, but you're going to sit down in the back of the squad for us, okay?
Can I actually just sit with my children and have water?
Yeah, we can bring your children over.
Bring my children. I would love a glass of water.
Let's go up in this squad over
Well,
here.
my children are here.
We'll bring them over in a
over.
minute. Let me go check you out. Yeah, we're gonna get it. Kyle went to go get you one.
You guys sending a dive team over that way then?
Miller's husband was also missing. I'll talk about him in just a moment. He dies in this story as well. Deputies found Miller's 4-year-old son at the bottom of the lake. They say that Miller threw him from the dock and he drowned. Now, they say Miller's husband also drowned because he was disappointed in himself and how he performed during these religious exercises that Ruth Miller and her family were allegedly going through. And Miller's husband tried to swim out to a sandbar where he drowned. His body was also found at the bottom of the lake.
I gave him to God.
You gave him to God.
Yes.
What do you mean by that?
I threw him in the lake and I gave him to God. And people are going to tell me I am crazy, but he is real and he loves you. He really does love you. He loves you.
Now, you see how Miller is acting in that body camera video. Prosecutors see this as a woman who is admitting to killing her own son, who was just 4 years old. But the defense is arguing the woman you see here was not in the right state of mind, and that is why they're pleading not guilty by reason of insanity after Miller's first court appearance in September, where she is now facing 7 charges. Here is what her attorney argued per WKYC-TV.
Well, I don't think that this is an issue of a whodunit. I think everyone recognizes the fact that that she did do it, but that's just one part of it. That's the act. The big question in this case is the why it was done, and that's what this whole case is going to be about, is the why. How did this happen?
I know you cannot say everything she said, but has she shared with you her feelings about what happened on the 23rd?
Well, she's obviously devastated by what occurred. This is not something by any stretch of the imagination where we could think that someone would wake up and destroy not just their life but the life of their child. I mean, something is wrong, and that's what we're getting to the bottom of now. But obviously she's devastated with what's happened. She is, her family is, everyone is.
Miller returned to court on Monday for a hearing where her defense tried to get her granted bond. Multiple members of law enforcement were called to the stand talking about what they experienced when they met with Miller on the day of her arrest. Now, Miller was forced to watch the body camera video in the courtroom. It was up on a big screen being played for the judge. Now, even though she has been mostly subdued during these court appearances, this was the first time we saw some emotion. You can see the tears in her eyes. Miller's attorney argued that she should get bond because she won't be in the right care for her mental health if she is kept in jail. After hearing roughly 4 hours of evidence and testimony, this is what the judge decided per WKYC TV.
Ruth, I'm not trying to make it more drama than is necessary. I'm just trying to go through and make it clear to you as to what my thinking is at this point. And that is, I am concluding that the state has presented clear and convincing evidence that the proof is evident, or the presumption is great, that you committed the offense of murder at a minimum and felonious assault as a minimum, as you have been charged in the indictment.
The judge denied Ruth Miller bond, pointing to the fact that multiple charges that she is facing could lead to no bond on their own. The judge also said that her next appearance will be for a pre-trial conference next month. Join us now to talk more about this from Ohio is criminal defense attorney Diane Menashe. It's always great to have you on Law and Crime. So the defense for Ruth Miller, and everybody's seen the body camera video, and in the words of the defense attorney, this isn't really a whodunit kind of case. But how strong of an argument does the defense have to go not guilty by reason of insanity?
Really strong, especially with that body camera footage. I watched it before today, and I mean, she's clearly in a state of psychosis. I mean, she says that she gave her child to God. She also, when she's asked where her husband is, she indicates that he's inside of a fish. And some statements, and I think what's also really important here is, when you're thinking about that insanity defense, we don't have any reason to believe that she was under the influence of any drugs or alcohol, and which would eliminate her from being able to raise that as an affirmative defense. She also just really seems to be very clear in what she's saying, as in that's what she truly believes. It really does seem like a state of psychosis for sure. So I think to answer your question, I mean, this is an insanity defense, it seems like, if there ever is one.
Because I know on the outside, for those of us not in the courtroom, it's easy to say conversationally, you would have to be insane to do what this woman did. But like legally, what is the bar that you have to prove to say that someone actually was insane when they committed the crime of murder?
Well, assuming that they raise insanity as a defense, they will file a not guilty by reason of insanity, and they will previously have had her evaluated by a number of mental health experts. I know, Chris, it sounded like she spent a week in a mental health facility between her arrests and being taken back to the jail. So we can assume certainly that weeks of time will be very important for her mental health evaluation. But as her counsel, they'll file the notice of not guilty by reason of insanity, and then under the law, she would essentially have to admit that she committed those crimes. However, because of mental illness or a mental defect, she didn't have the requisite or the required the required intent to commit those crimes.
One thing I thought of too in just her court appearances, because when this story first happened and it just seemed like absolute chaos, if you're even a deputy responding to this, trying to figure out what happened, and then you see her in the body camera video and she's at a higher level of energy than when you see her in the courtroom. And then even yesterday, she has tears in her eyes watching this body camera back. When it comes to her body language, if this were to go to trial, that juxtaposition, how much of a factor could that be? And just how a juror kind of just takes in who this woman is, trying to understand whether or not she actually is not guilty by reason of insanity.
Well, I think what you're saying is really going to be part of their defense, I would assume, which is she probably wasn't medicated, right, at the time of these alleged offenses. And then she is arrested and she's put in a mental facility for a week. And there's no question that when in that facility, she's medicated. And then she's in court and her demeanor has changed, right? She's, as the medication would do, it would take her out of that psychosis, which is that high and low. And she appears in court and she has much more of a calm demeanor. And then, as she moves along and when she's properly medicated, I think that will certainly help in the defense, plea for an NGRI in this case is, but for her mental health, she wouldn't have committed the offenses that she did. And if she wasn't properly medicated, I mean, that's going to be everything.
Because I also think of just the Amish lifestyle, which I don't know personally, but it's not a lifestyle where you're regularly going to seeing a therapist and being medicated the way a lot of people with mental health issues, the resources that they're able to have. How could the fact that she is part of the Amish community factor into kind of just the story of this woman and who she is and whether or not she has a mental health problem to the point where she could be considered insane?
I mean, I think it's going to be to her benefit, because as what we know culturally about the Amish is what you've just said, Chris, right? Like, it's not encouraged to leave the community to go get, medical, let alone mental health treatment, and then taking medications, going to a pharmacy to get your scripts filled. I mean, those aren't things that people that are in the Amish community culturally are doing. And so, we know if they're bipolar, paranoid schizophrenic, which certainly seems that might be the case here. She's not getting that medication, right, to temper the highs and lows and to stop the voices that she's clearly hearing. So I think it's going to be everything. If she's in a culture or community that doesn't encourage treating your mental health, I mean, and then she doesn't, and that and her actions are just a byproduct of that. It's really tragic for sure. But Chris, she's clearly hearing voices. Like, she says, God's telling me to do this. I gave my child to God. And we know hearing those voices and acting upon them in an insanity defense is really critical, because that's that psychosis.
When she's and if she was in the mental health facility for the past, for the week between her arrest and then making that first appearance, and then I know part of the argument that her defense attorney made yesterday was that she's not going to get the type of resources that she needs being in jail, which is why they wanted her out on bond. How likely could it be, say she is schizophrenic, say she is whatever mental health condition she may have, how does the defense go about seeing if she could be diagnosed with that ahead of a trial, so you actually have something that you can present to the jury of saying, she wasn't diagnosed with this before, she didn't know she had it, but here she is now, we have a doctor saying that this is actually what she's dealing with?
Well, I think one thing that's going to be great is that week stint in the mental health hospital, she definitely would have been evaluated by the state's own, employees or experts. So there'll certainly be a finding there, and then medication accordingly. And then, of course, once she's in the jail, her defense attorneys will do what all of us do in these cases of either, potential insanity or even competency, is we engage experts to go in and do evaluations of the client. I think the body camera, any expert evaluating this case, whether it's on the defense or the state side, will be looking at that body camera footage, understanding if she has any prior history of mental health. Was she medicated? Has she ever seen anyone? I think there'll be collateral interviews of family members and people in the community to talk about what was she like the days before. I saw, and Chris, some of the people in the community said, well, she's always been crazy. So I think, those kind of collateral interviews, any kind of expert will also engage in that to get a really better understanding of how this woman was navigating in her community just on a daily basis in the days leading up to the events.
And even if there is a strong amount of evidence that she could win a not guilty by reason of insanity defense, the judge still yesterday, and I know, bond hearing is very different from a trial, but he said, he still sees her as a danger to the community. What do you make of that, where it just seems the court still sees her as someone who, even she admitted, killed her 4-year-old son?
I watched the bond hearing, and quite frankly, I don't disagree with the judge. I think the danger and the safety of the community is obviously one of the factors statutorily that's probably the most important for the judge to consider. But what we know from mental health and, being medicated properly is that it takes medication about 30 days to really take its effect on a person. And at this point, we can ostensibly assume she's now medicated. She's just newly medicated. She's going to have, treatment providers seeing her, make sure that she's stabilized on those medications. There might be adjustments of dosages. And so I actually don't disagree that the judge is saying it's just too early. Chris, though, important to remember that bond is a fluid concept. Her attorneys can re-raise the issue at bond at any period of time. And it's potentially possible after 30, 45 days with another expert, the defense might reapproach the court and say, now she is stabilized on her medication, now she is no longer a threat to the community, and we have a safe and secure place where she can go, which isn't a jail.
Knowing that right now, the state was saying minimum she would get 20 years to life in prison if she was found guilty of she's facing 7 counts, including aggravated murder. if there's new evidence that comes to light, like her being diagnosed with a condition that would explain a lot of what we saw in that body camera video, what's the back and forth? Is there a back and forth between the prosecution and the defense where I could see a prosecutor saying like, okay, maybe she was, insane? Or is it something where you're a prosecutor, you kind of have your marching orders and applying the law this way, that you're just going to try to convict her of aggravated murder and all these other charges?
Well, I would certainly hope that in the criminal justice system, if, the defense, provides expert reports with respect to her mental health or mental defect at the time of the offense, that supports an insanity defense, that the prosecution would at a minimum really assess, right, the credibility of those experts, potentially get their own experts to review the findings and conclusions of the defense experts. I mean, one would hope that a prosecutor, just because they indict a case, right, doesn't mean that that they sort of have tunnel vision for the rest of that case. I also have to tell you, Chris, I think one of the things that would be really important is, not only does she appear not to be under the influence of drugs or alcohol at the time, but additionally to that, we always look in insanity defenses what a person's doing afterwards. So for instance, if they flee the scene or they tamper with evidence or they lie to law enforcement, those types of behavior are always used to show that individuals actually knew what they did was wrong, which is why they did those things. In this case, we have her just plainly talking to police. She's even touching the police officer like a friend in the body cam. So I think there's the absence of that too, which is, again, really compelling to this being an NGRI case.
If she is found not guilty by reason of insanity, what does her life look like after that happens? I mean, if she's, someone who could be considered a danger to the community, and say a jury just sees it the way of the defense, I mean, is there any sort of facility that she's forced to go to, or what happens next after someone would win a case like that?
Yes, so the judge would commit her to a mental health facility, a lockdown facility, and the commitment is the duration of the highest level offense for which she's charged. So in this case, we know it's 20 to life because she's charged with an aggravated murder. So she would essentially be sent to a mental health facility for the rest of her life. And then every 6 months, the court would have essentially like a case review where, the court and the mental health facility and the attorneys would review her progress and determine if it is necessary to continue to keep her in the facility up to and through the rest of her life.
So it is not likely, I mean, with the defense going this track, the idea that there would be a not guilty and she's walking out of there and then heading back to her family in the way that someone would get a not guilty, she's definitely headed to some sort of facility, whether it be prison or elsewhere.
No question.
As far as just dealing with, these cases involving someone in a community that is very different, and I'm phrasing it in a way of the Amish, it's just a different lifestyle that people have. They do not regularly, I'm sure it's shocking to be in a courtroom for her because you come from a place where you're living a very different type of lifestyle. Just what is it like as an attorney when you're working with someone, maybe it's the Amish, maybe it's a different religious sect, to just help them understand exactly what they're going through?
And I noticed in the bond hearing that the judge even was saying to her, this isn't your trial, although it might feel like that. We can presume a lot of people know, or they think they know what goes on in a courtroom because they watch TV. And the absence of not watching TV and being in the Amish community, I mean, this was probably a really startling event to her, being just at a bond hearing. So I think to answer your question, as defense attorneys, you've just got to really be proactive and prepare your clients for everything that's to come, including even the little things, Chris, like, who stands when and who sits when, and, what the judge does and what my role as your attorney is. And I think it's kind of like a child in a way, to be honest, is, really manage their expectations and prepare them visually for what they're about to walk into. And you've just got to continuously do that. I mean, that's true of a client like this or a client that has intellectual deficits. I mean, these are things that we really need to do as defense attorneys.
One part of this story that I think in some ways gets lost, and clearly we're talking about a 4-year-old that lost his life, but like the husband is dead because he, based off everything that was going on with this family, is there anything that could factor in to this trial related to the husband? Because it seems like he was kind of his own different thing in this case because he went out swimming and was not able to survive.
Yeah, the husband's an interesting kind of part of the story. It doesn't feel as well explained, and certainly I don't think the officers were asking her as pointed questions about the husband as they were about the child. And so certainly I'm sure there's more information to come there. But they have obviously charged her, right, with the 2 deaths. And I think, you know, the NGRI defense obviously will be as to both. We can presume that if she was suffering from a mental illness or mental defect at the time of her 4-year-old's death, that she was suffering from that same defect or illness at the time of his. So I would assume it would be a complete affirmative defense. But I'm sure there's more to come on the husband piece. The news just hasn't covered it, or the stories just aren't focused on it as much for the obvious reasons, right? Like having a child, you know, killing your own child is well, it stands out.
Yeah. No, absolutely. And then just lastly, I mean, even in cases where you're going for the insanity defense and you feel like you have a really strong case, how difficult is it to get a jury, typically, to go along with you on that? I guess, how do jurors typically see those defenses?
Well, I think first of all, the experts that they engage are going to be critical, right? Not only, you know, the thoroughness of their evaluation, but just also, you know, their training and their experience, and, you know, how often have they testified in court, and their reputation and their credibility. I mean, that's going to be really the first and foremost in their success or lack thereof. And I think otherwise, you know, just talking about the facts of the case and how they can marry those facts to those expert reports, like the body cam and the fact that she didn't flee and her behavior afterwards is very, you know, she's talking to police officers like they're her friends. I think their success is going to be, you know, in front of that jury, is taking all the facts and marrying those to those expert reports. I do have to tell you, though, that I think this is a case that, I mean, this is an NGR case for a jury, and I think that they hopefully will have great success. I think lastly, Chris, I think any juror will think to themselves, you know, you've got to be crazy to kill your own child, right? And so as much as that is a help, I think in this case, given the death of the young child, jurors will come in thinking, I'm a parent and that would never cross my mind. There must be something different, or a defect or a mental illness with her. So I do think that they won't necessarily come in with that bias that jurors might otherwise come in when they see someone's facing aggravated murder.
Yeah, and we'll see. I know she's going to be in court next for a pretrial conference in October. But very interesting to see how this case is taking shape on a very sad story out of Ohio. Diane Menashe, it's always great to have you on Law and Crime, criminal defense attorney. Thanks for being with us.
Thanks for having me.
That will do it for On the Case, presented by Law and Crime. Subscribe to us on YouTube and Spotify. I'm Chris Stewart. We'll see you next time.